This is Triple Take on Bloomberg. Today we are focused on big bank earnings, and so far we have focused on the biggest of them all, the Goliaths out there, JP Morgan results and the ramifications from the Ukraine war. We're now moving on to our third take, a focus on the Davids out there, the great consolidation potentially, and the social impact of fewer bank branches out there, Caroline. There's a new report out there that talks about the idea here that the bank closure rate has doubled during the pandemic, and you have to wonder about the effects.
Yeah, the limitations, the fact that you can't access a bank on your local street, and what that means for your access to capital to grow a business, particularly small businesses. I'm looking at these amazing statistics that really show back in 1994, about 80% of all banks out there were small banks in terms of asset size. And then we had about, 20% or so being the large ones. Since then, we are about 50-50. Now, 2021, 50% large, 50% small. But the sheer scale of consolidation, the number that we are now left with, so squeezed, that's got to be hitting local communities, Romain.
Yeah, absolutely here. And maybe we can get some insight out of our next guest, Jesse VanTol, joining us right now. He's the president and CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. And Jesse, we've been talking a lot on this program over the last couple of years about the role of small and community banks out there, and really the absence of those banks in an environment, at least during the pandemic, where it seemed like they were needed the most. I look at these statistics here, and you talk about something like 18,000 banking institutions back in the 80s, now down to 5,000. Of that 5,000, we're pretty much talking a few big players here kind of dominating that space, right?
That's right. I mean, the story here is bank consolidation and branch consolidation. 18,000 institutions down to 5,000. The trend line continues. We've seen ongoing mergers, consolidations at the regional bank level, at the community bank level. The question is, are we headed for Europe, where you see 5 large institutions really dominate the market? And what does that mean for access, for competition? We've seen dozens of banking deserts crop up, especially in rural places, in underserved markets, and minority communities. And the effect that has on a community, Caroline referenced it, a bank branch is really important. You or I may prefer today to go and use one of these, or stay at home and use one of these to cash our check, but a small business prefers to go into the branch. Certain populations prefer to go into the branch. Studies also show that when the branch closes, small business lending plummets. And so branches are critical to those communities. We see an ongoing trend of consolidation and loss.
And Jesse, did that come to bear during COVID at all? There were many sort of shining a light on just how exceptional some of these community banks were about getting, particularly the financial assistance, the loans, PPP loans that were authorized by federal government during COVID times. But also with that consolidation, did that mean that less local businesses just had the point person there that they needed?
That's right. I mean, look, obviously part of this is consumer preference. And we saw during the pandemic, people stopped going into branches at a point in time, but certainly small businesses, people who needed PPP loans. We heard stories of people who weren't able to get a hold of their banker to get a PPP loan because the branch was closed. I'll tell you, you can go into branches today on nights and weekends, branches and grocery stores, and see long lines. The demand is still there. But we see 2 trends. One is consumer preference. Less people are going into branches in some cases. And 2, consolidation, both driven by mergers and banks cutting costs by closing branches, opting to serve people digitally online. The question is, how far can you push that before people start to show a preference for those institutions?
Jesse, in the wake of 2008, why has this been allowed to happen when there had been such a big concern about too big to fail in the first place, yet the banks have only gotten bigger?
Well, look, the federal banking regulators have shown a reluctance to not approve bank consolidations and mergers. There are laws, there are limits. JP Morgan Chase is above the limit, can't buy another bank. It's one of the reasons they're opening branches, opening over 200 branches in the last few years. But federal regulators have been reluctant to say, no, you can't merge. And technology trends, other things are driving banks to want to consolidate, to achieve scale, to reduce their costs. The competition is fierce.
All right, Jesse, we're going to have to leave it there. Appreciate you taking time to be with us to talk about an issue we focus on a lot on this show. Jesse VanTol there, CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition.